And you know what? That's what I get for not checking our audio before we go live. But don't worry, I'll put the theme song in post. Welcome, everybody, to another episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast, a very quiet intro version of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. Joining us, as always, is Mr. Henry Sledge. Henry, how are you doing tonight, sir?
Hey, doing well, doing well. Glad to be here,
I hit the
as
theme
always.
song on the software, but it didn't play. I think because I had the soundboard off when I loaded the software, but that's all right. We'll load it in post. But Jeff Copsetta could not join us tonight. He will be back hopefully next week with tales of all the things he has going on in his world. And it's been a long week or two since we've all spoken. I guess first and foremost, late Thanksgiving, everybody. Hope everybody got to do what they wanted to do during Thanksgiving time and all that stuff. But we're going to hand it over to Mr. Henry Sledge. It's so weird with no background music, but he had a very cool opportunity to sit on the 16th anniversary of the International World War II Conference. Is that correct,
It
sir?
it was the 15th
15th. Oh, see, I'm jumping ahead of you.
International World War II Conference.
All because the damn music. Just, it's funny when you do stuff like this every week, you rely on those audible crutches, they kind of set the pace for the show. And, well,
I didn't realize how much I missed it till
yeah.
I just missed it.
But they won't know because we'll put it in post, as they say in the industry. So it's
We're,
probably
we're
wrapping
flying
up
on
right
instruments here.
about now. It just faded out. So welcome everybody. But yeah, so tell us what's going on in your neck of the world, sir.
Well, yeah. So the this past weekend in New Orleans was the International World War II Conference, the 15th International World War II Conference. I had been invited to be there as a presenter on a panel with Richard Frank and Saul David. Saul, of course, is the British military historian extraordinaire who wrote the book that just came out in September called Devil Dogs, and it's about my father's unit, K Company, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines. But more on that later. But the International World War II Conference, Don, is I would say it's the marquee event at the National World War II Museum. They have it every year.
Well, I was going to ask you, how does it feel being someone like you who are such a huge fan of those two guys? I mean, it's not like you just showed up with two living historians like a me or a Jeff or a Gabe Riviera tuning in on YouTube. What's up, Gabe? But to be on a panel with such scholars such as those two, I mean, how was that for this is probably one of your first bigger public outings, wasn't it?
Yeah, it probably the biggest so far. But let me look. I mean, if I'd been there with you and Jeff, that would have been fantastic. I mean, because
yeah, but there'd have been like three people in the audience.
Do what?
I said, yeah, but there only been like 3 people in the audience, and the museum would have been greatly disappointed with the turnout.
And we could have shared some of the exhibits there and just pinged off each other. It would have been great. But yeah, I mean, to your point, it was a pretty unique experience. I mean, probably one of the headliners of the whole deal was James Holland, who is we've talked about him. I'm reading his Normandy book right now. Normandy 44 is the name of it. I'm getting pretty close to being finished with it. But James has a fantastic podcast called the WWII podcast. And he was there, and I had said to Saul, because obviously he and Saul know each other, and I had said, yeah, I heard James Holland's going to be here. Really hope I get to meet him. Not expecting that I would, not presuming anything, Don. I mean, just because I would never do that. But the day, like I gave my presentation on Friday afternoon, and I'm sitting there outside the ballroom where they had everything set up with conference tables and the panel dais and all that.
Now,
and
are you in full blown monkey suit, shirt, tie, jacket, the whole rigmarole?
Yeah, I did. I had a suit. And Rich and Saul both had coats and ties as well. And so, I didn't wear a tie during the rest of the conference, but I did for my panel. Sure. But yeah, I'm sitting there outside the ballroom, while another session is about to wrap up before I go in for the one that would be mine. And, James Holland comes walking by. Hey, nice to see you. Glad to see you here. So like he had read the program. He knew who I was. He knew I was there. And, he's looking forward to your talk, by the way, and he walks on off. I'm just like, great, man. This is, a little bit of pressure here because, yeah. I mean, I've done public speaking, Don, but I haven't done a lot of it. and I've certainly never done it on that level.
Sure. I mean,
And
this isn't
but
this isn't show and tell in front of the eighth grade class or speaking at the local VFW with 20, 30 guys hanging around. This is
this here was a K bar. My daddy carried it all through the war. Yeah, no, it was
now over my shoulder. You'll see
exactly.
this speckled painted color. By the way, not to put a pause on your experience,
No,
but
go ahead.
when
Go
you
ahead.
sent me the photo of your father's haversack and it had that camouflage paint on it, I was just blown away because like you never saw that in any of the photos. You sure as hell didn't see it on the recreation on the movie. And
Well, actually, yeah, you did.
really,
Think of yeah, you. I noticed it. You actually did see the paint daubed on their packs, on their haversacks. If you especially, you
like on
really notice
Okinawa,
it, huh?
on the Okinawa scenes.
No, on the Peleliu scenes, the
Huh.
ones where you see Lecky and his officer, they never really named the guy, but he did a great job. And then you see him from the back and his
Mm-hmm.
pack, because they're massing up, getting ready to go across the airfield, and you can really clearly see his pack, and it's got those dark green daubs of paint.
Yeah.
Um,
Speaking of, I'm
but
glad you brought that up. We'll get back to your panel here in a minute. We got plenty of time. When the series came out, one of the things I did is I downloaded all the high quality wallpapers, quote unquote, that I could find on
sure,
Google, and one of them is a photo of Lecky in the foxhole, and he looks like he's wearing an airborne musette bag. I'm like, what the fuck is he got in there? Got the little side pocket on it that I keep my canteen in when I do my airborne. I mean, not my canteen, my flask in when I do my airborne impression or my army. And I'm like, why? I understood that maybe the army musette bag. I was scrolling through eBay the other day, and I actually found a 1943 Boyd USMC officer pack, and it looks identical to the Army musette bag with the pocket on the side. And it turns out that's what Lecky had on in that episode, and I had never seen one before. I just
I'll have to.
assumed.
I need to rewatch that.
I'll just.
Just for
I was
that.
trying to find the. I have the screenshot on my computer somewhere because I was going to send it to you and Jeff. Like, have you ever seen this? And then send you the musette. It actually says Boyd 43 USMC on it, so it's not like it was a mislabeled Army infantry. I mean, it's basically identical except for it doesn't have the detachable straps where they clip it on, and it actually has sewn on straps with nice little wideners on it. But it was made for the Marine Corps. I had never seen one before. I was like, oh, that's so cool. But anyhow,
Interesting.
that's enough of the haversack talk. So anyhow, back to your panel.
No, that's a lovely rabbit hole to go down. We got to love those diversions. But yeah, so Friday afternoon, the thing kicked off on Thursday. We rolled into town Wednesday night. I took my wife and son out to dinner, kind of an early birthday celebration for her. And then things kicked off on Thursday, and then my panel was on Friday. There were probably, they probably sell 400 tickets to this thing. It's these are not $20 tickets
No,
to a football game.
I remember
Yeah,
you told me
they're
you're
like $1,300.
yeah, you told me you're doing this panel. I was like, oh, sweet. Send me a link to the Ticketmaster. I'll go. And you're like, yeah, yeah, you may want to rethink that. Like,
Well,
this is
yeah,
this is
this
the
is
in football terms, this is more like a Super Bowl ticket opposed to your Sunday night or Monday NFL game.
yeah, that's probably a pretty good analogy. But I mean, when you look at they had some heavy hitters there,
Yeah.
Don, and by no means did I consider myself one of those heavy hitters, but don't know if you've heard of the British author Richard Overy. He's written quite a few books through the years. He's just come out with a recent one, but he was there. He had a one-on-one presentation or a one-on-one conversation Thursday night with Dr. Alex Ritchie about his latest book. You've got Donald Miller, who wrote Masters of the Air. Of course, Don Miller is basically kind of a fixture over there. He's basically in house. I mean, he's there all the time, but he did some stuff related to 8th Air Force, obviously. But I mean, just an A-list of authors, historians. But yeah, my panel was Friday afternoon with Saul and Rich, and the way they do these panels, like when I was invited to be a part of this months ago, I envisioned it was going to be this roundtable discussion and some Q&A.
Kind of like our podcast. 3 guys talking back and forth.
Exactly.
Answer, taking
Exactly.
questions from the
Precisely. I
audience.
thought it'd be kind of nice and laid back. I'm like, okay, I'm not going to have to get up and do some, keynote speech with the spotlight on me.
Yeah, like Comic-Con, there's William Shatner, there's a couple other guys, people from the audience ask some questions. You guys talk back and forth, one of those type of things.
Yeah, and so, but then, like a few weeks before we start getting emails, kind of really laying it out, like, okay, here's how this is going to work. And so I get an email that says, okay, here, the Devil Dogs, Eugene Sledge, K Company panel. Here's how it's going to be. Rich is going to chair it, Rich Frank. It's going to be 15 minutes of Saul David discussing Devil Dogs. It's going to be 15 minutes of Henry Sledge discussing Eugene Sledge, as the son of Sledgehammer. And then it's going to be like 20 minutes of roundtable and then remaining time Q&A. And so I see that, and that kind of like brought it, like really clarified. I'm like, damn, man,
that's
I got to
when he
sit down
knew
and actually
he
prepare
messed up.
something here. Huh?
So that's when he knew he messed up.
No, not at all. I mean, I was all in 200%, but I really, what I did was I just really wrote out my remarks, if you want to call them that. And I mean, and I practiced them. I tried to be very polished and as professional as I could be. And I mean, look, the thing was, Don, it's like this. I mean, I'm not going to get on there and try to tell the history of Peleliu Okinawa or Cake.
Sure.
I mean, I'm not going to take Rich Frank's job. I'm not going to do Saul David's job. They're perfectly capable of doing that. I was there to add personal perspective and context as the son of Sledgehammer.
Now, when you wrote out your material, did you write verbatim stuff to memorize, or did you just write out talking points to refresh you on things? Because I mean, the subject matter.
Yeah.
So I can't imagine.
Good question. That's a good question. Because what we do here, that's interesting. I wrote it verbatim.
Really?
Yes. I did not want to take any. I have done a little bit of speaking in the past where it's like I'd kind of write out talking points and then I'd get started. And again, never on this level, never in front of 400 people like this. And I'd get started and then I'd get distracted about something. And I did not want to do that here. I wanted to have a script. I wanted to be professional, rehearsed, and stick to that and get through it.
Sure.
And so I wrote it verbatim.
Now, while he was up doing his 15 minutes, were you in your head going over your material, or were you listening to his material so you could play off of it a little bit?
I had already rehearsed mine. I mean, here's the thing. So Rich sent out an email a week before and said, hey, let's do a Zoom call.
Mm-hmm.
And just you, me, and Saul, and kind of, flesh it out and kind of talk about it. And so we did that. And I sent him my remarks. And he came back and said, this is perfect. This is beautiful. This is exactly what we want from you. This will be great. But yeah, we had a 3-way conversation, a Zoom call,
Sure.
And so Rich was kind of, Saul obviously is a seasoned professional in this kind of thing. He's never been to the World War II conference, but he's obviously done a lot of this kind of thing. Rich has been doing it for decades. And Rich also sent out some instructions on that were geared towards new presenters, for somebody who's never seen the format over there and really how it works. And so, he's like, hey, we're not going to stand up at a lectern. We're going to be seated, behind a table on the dais. And that was great. I love that. And so it kind of really put a spin on everything. It helped me know what to expect. I was able to just write my material and practice it and then listen to Saul's presentation. And Saul could not have been more gracious and considerate. And he, like in our Zoom call beforehand, he said, hey man, if I ask this, this, and this, or talk about this and this, will that get in your way? And, I'm
That's
like,
cool.
no, man, not at all.
Didn't want to step on your material.
Yeah. So we knew that would not be an issue. So no, I was enjoying his talk, and then his 15 minutes were up, and then I did mine. And I based on the way people reacted to it, I think it went really well.
Okay, and for our audience, for the next 15 minutes, Henry is going to give us his full presentation, word for word. Go. No, broad strokes. What were just some of the topics that you covered? Because we are going to post a link to the YouTube video so you can see his presentation. But
Sure.
just for
Yeah, I
our
mean, I
enjoyment.
wrote it from. I mean, honestly, Don, you and Jeff have heard all this stuff. It's stuff we've talked. Like when I was a guest on here before you invited me to be a co-host. Um, it's stuff that we have talked about. You know, me remembering watching him sit up late at night and write the book. My mother typing it, and of course, anything um, nobody knows outside of you and Jeff. My mother passed away a week ago today, so that's been a pretty challenging time.
Yes.
But
Thoughts and prayers.
she knew that I was over there. She was really proud of me, doing this, and knew it was a huge deal. And but my remarks were, focusing on the memories of growing up. I talked about. I think I told you and
My
Jeff
favorite story ever, when you big time snafu. You're like, I got ball to play. I'm out.
Yeah. Well, I actually didn't mention meeting. No, I didn't talk about meeting snafu. Yeah, actually, I did. I think that came up in Q&A.
Yeah, you big time. So, yeah, nice to meet you. I got tree houses to build. I gotta go.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey, sorry, snafu. I got to find you. I got a date with tonight, so I'll talk. No, that did not happen. But I talked about like when I was probably 6 years old, and the movie Patton came on, and it was the scene in Tobruk with all the explosions and just that cacophony of artillery, and my dad just became upset, started pounding the refrigerator. I talked about that.
I'm not familiar with that story.
Really?
Yeah, you've never told us that story.
Okay, well, I presented that as evidence of the cost of the savagery of surviving that conflict, right?
Sure.
So, but to tell you the story and to tell it conversationally to our listeners, and I just feel like I've told this one so many times, people are tired of hearing it. But so in 1971, Patton came out with George C. Scott in 1970.
Okay.
I'm guessing, it hit primetime TV 71 or so. That's just a guess. I know I couldn't have been more than about 5 or 6 years old. But my dad wanted nothing to do with war movies. He hated them. He would never watch them. Somehow my brother talked him into it, like, oh, it's going to be great, Dad. It's going to be really good. And so I have a very clear memory of us sitting in our living room and little black and white TV we had at the time. And that scene comes on, and I don't remember anything
Sunday,
before
November
that,
19th, 1972, 2 years after theatrical release. So
that's when it showed. Was
Sunday,
that what it was?
November 19th. So this month, about 9.5 days ago, 1972.
Wow.
Is when it first.
That's interesting.
On
Okay.
ABC.
All right. Yeah, there you go. Well, so we're sitting there, and that the scene where they're in Tobruk is on the screen, and it's just one shell explosion after another. You had all those tanks coming across the desert, and it's just pretty relentless at that point. And I just remember my dad sitting there in the chair, and I mean, I didn't, so I was 7 years old, and I just remember him becoming very agitated, and it just became more and more physically obvious that he was getting into a state of distress. And he got up and went into the kitchen, out of the living room. He walked into the kitchen, and the way our house was, the house I was born in, you could sit in the living room and look down the hall into the kitchen. Okay. Mm-hmm. And I can still see him he started just beating the shit out of the refrigerator. And he was sobbing and very upset. And, I'm like, my mom's like, turn the TV off, John. And so he does. And I'm sitting there like, well, I didn't know what the hell was going on. And my mom got him, and I mean, he was sobbing, man. He was just out of control. And she sat him down and got him calmed down. And we didn't go back to watching the movie that night, but talking to her about it later, she, because remember now, this is like 9 years before With the Old Breed was published.
That's what I was thinking. I was waiting for you to pause, because I know that he found a lot of therapy writing that book, or after it came out.
Exactly. So that would have been when he was still in the early stages of those late night writing sessions. And so,
which dug up a lot of memories, I'm sure.
Yeah. And so she had conversations with him after that episode, that incident. And, he told her what has come to be very common knowledge, which was when they were under heavy shell fire, they would just pound the ground in front of their foxholes in sheer desperation. Um, and so that was, as I said it in my remarks, hitting the refrigerator was his Pavlovian response to what he saw on TV.
It's like when you scratch a dog's side, their leg just starts kicking. Same
Right.
thing. Yeah.
Right. It was just Pavlovian was the best word I could
Yeah.
think of to
No.
describe it.
No. That's perfect.
So yeah, I thought I had told you that story, but so I brought that up,
And by the way, for you young cats, this isn't a modern day crappy aluminum refrigerator that dents when you lean on it. This was a nice, probably sturdy 1962 refrigerator that's strong as a Buick's hood.
yeah, that's a good analogy. It's as strong as it probably had as much steel in it too. Um, but yeah, so I brought that up, and then
Since we're
talked
on the
about.
topic, not to cut you off, but since we're on the topic, because we see it in a lot of Born on the 4th of July, you see it, and you've seen it in a couple other movies. Did 4th of July affect him in that manner? Did he stay away from it?
He never really liked fireworks. The only time, I mean, kids in the neighborhood when my brother and I were growing up, they had fireworks.
Yeah, but they weren't the
I'm not.
mortars that we're launching nowadays.
Yeah, I don't like false drama, so I'm not going to tell you that.
Yeah.
He'd hear a firecracker and then he'd just start. It was never anything like that. But I can tell you, he did not like it. He did not.
Sure.
Hey, let's go to a fireworks show. No, that never happened.
Yeah.
In his later life, I probably was 30-ish, and we actually did go to a fireworks show, and it was one of those where like people are parking on the side of a mountain and watching the fireworks miles away, and he was enjoying that. I remember that, but yeah, in the earlier years, no, it was something he eschewed whenever possible. He avoided it.
And so you covered that topic during the panel.
Yeah, we touched on that. We touched on, but because so much, Richard Frank's really big on illustrating the human cost. Okay, and so John Parshall, who is just a superb military historian, he wrote Shattered Sword, which is a great book on Midway. He's working on a book now on 1942. He did a slide, and Rich actually sent this to Saul and me, and I'll forward it to you after the show if you want, but
Please.
It contextualizes things. It shows the geographical area on a map of the Battle of the Bulge, and then superimposed over that is a map of Okinawa and a little extension of Iwo Jima and Peleliu. And what it's doing, and it says and it has statistics on there because John Parshall is superb at this kind of thing. Deaths per square mile for the United States forces in Battle of the Bulge were like 9 deaths per square mile during the Bulge. Tarawa, deaths per square mile was like 1,700. Peleliu was like deaths per square mile, 138. Okinawa was like 121, I think. Just the Pacific was just these off the chart numbers. Not to minimize in any way what happened at Battle of the Bulge.
No, just statistically, when you dump amount that, especially Tarawa, when you dump that many people on such a small, massive land, particularly an island, there's nowhere to go, and then you have naval ships, artillery, mortars, and small arm fires. Obviously, per mile, per square foot, even per mile, you are going to have a higher body count because people are closer together. They don't have the land mass to spread out and extend those lines, with the exception of Guadalcanal.
Exactly. So certainly not on Tarawa, certainly not on Peleliu, not on Iwo Jima either. But Okinawa maybe a little more so, but there was just so many civilians. The Japanese 32nd Army, 4 Army divisions, 2 Marine divisions. There's so much stuff cram packed there. So to your point, yes, good analogy. But yeah, so I touched on those major points and tried to bring a human face through my own memories of that the cost of the savagery of what Rich illustrated with that slide when he introduced us. And I think it went over really well. I mean, and I'm not saying that like I'm ringing my own bell. I just based on what people, the entire. I mean, look, man, I work in a job. I like my job. Okay, don't get me wrong. I like my day job, but I sit in a cubicle and just do what I'm told.
Mm-hmm.
It's humdrum. There's nothing exciting about it, and people who know me wouldn't be shocked at me saying that. I mean, I think a lot of people in that situation would say that, but to be there discussing what I was discussing in the company, the people I was discussing it with, and then having people come up to me. I mean, it really, and then after the panel, so they had Saul and me sit at a table, and he, of course, was signing copies of Devil Dogs, and I was signing. You may have seen a picture on Facebook. I was signing copies of With the Old Breed. I couldn't believe how many people were queuing up to buy With the Old Breed. And so people were asking me to sign it, and I was happily doing that.
Is that
Um,
not to interrupt? We never talked about that
that's
because
okay.
I have a 1981 copy. I know Jeff has a few years old copy. When the Pacific came out, was that Bantan who originally published that? With
It was Presidio Press who originally published
did
With
they
the Old Breed.
republish that when the Pacific came out?
Yeah, that before they did. So Presidio Press has become Random House.
Okay, makes
I think
sense.
Random House bought them.
Sure.
So it's Random House, but they did the version here that is probably the most common. This cover has come off because this is my working copy that I use.
Okay.
This edition here was 2007
Okay.
after the Ken Burns The War.
Yeah, because I have the original '81 soft copy with the 1,000-yard stare on the front.
Yes, and my mom and I signed that for you.
Yes, you
didn't we?
did. Now I got to buy a new copy so I can reread it the 18th time.
That's
that
the
one
last copy she ever signed.
Really? Of mine? Mine is?
Yes.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yep. Yep.
I felt like a dick asking you, to be honest with you. I waited months. I waited months before I asked you.
No, man, you shouldn't. I was happy to do that.
I know.
She was too.
It was just, when you came on the podcast as a and this little behind the scenes for the audience, I didn't want to be all fanboy on you and shit. You know what I mean? I didn't want to ask you to do things for me, this and that. So I waited months before I said, hey, if I send you this copy, can you have your mom sign it for me?
Man, I was happy to do that, and it's even more poignant now.
Yeah, especially what you just said. And I'm looking at it now. I'm like, yeah, that's going off the bookshelf. I'm going into my glass cabinet. I'm just going to buy another copy.
That was the last copy With the Old Breed she ever signed for sure. That's straight up, straight from my mouth. I'm sure of that. But yeah,
after the panel, did you get that little adrenaline rush just from being up on stage in front of people?
I did, but honestly, man, I mean, like I didn't before because I just practiced the damn thing so many times.
Yeah.
Because, you see a guy like James Holland get up there and he did his little thing on military blunders. These guys do this kind of thing so much, Don, that it's as easy to them as what we're doing right now, just riffing off each other.
Sure.
They do it all the time. And plus they've written 15 books. So I really felt the pressure on my shoulders. Number one, to do, not to sound hokey, but to do my dad proud.
Yeah.
But
I mean,
let's
be honest. Let's be honest. On this subject matter, you had some huge effing shoes to fill, and that's all there is to it.
And I didn't want to make a fool of myself.
And the fact that this was your first real big appearance publicly, to go into an environment like that, on a panel like that, with that type of audience, and it's a lot of pressure. And I'm proud of you. You and I talked about it off the air.
Well, thank you.
And one of my favorite things working in radio was doing stage announcements, whether it was at a concert with front of 500 people, or as I told you, and the biggest show I ever did was in front of 16,000 people. But that becomes landscape, and to me, it's more nerve-wracking to do 300-400 people because you can hear the guy in the back going, "You suck," opposed to in front of 16,000. It's just loud noise. You can't hear anything. So to do that, in a room full of 400 people, I mean, that's hats off to you. Well, I can't take my hat off because my headphones are on, but I would take my HPT soft cap off to you and give you a jaunty tilt. So I'm proud of you.
Thank you.
You did your dad proud, and you did the show proud. Jeff's proud of you too.
Well, and I did. Hey, the program, which I have over there somewhere, my picture and bio. One of the things is co-host of What's the Scuttlebutt podcast. So
beautiful.
That's a good little mention for our show and what we do. But But yeah, man, it was cool. I mean, it was cool to meet. I mean, here there are people in this room that have written books that all three of us have read. That
Mm-hmm.
that I admire their work, and I don't know that all of them were in the room when I gave my talk. I know James Holland was because he told me how much he enjoyed it, and then I got to hang out with him. He actually interviewed me and Saul the next morning at breakfast
Nice.
for one of his episodes of We Have Ways. So that was cool. I kind of felt like, man, I can't believe. And I hate to do the fanboy thing like you say, but I'm a huge fan of James Holland, man. I
Yeah.
love his work. I love his podcast. His most recent episode is We Have Ways. He did one with our buddy John McManus talking about Douglas MacArthur. So, and everybody just seemed to think that the panel went well. Saul and me and Rich, it was just a great experience, and I hope I get to do it
Oh, I'm
again.
sure you
And
will. I'm sure you'll, especially. I mean, you'll definitely, whether it's there or another location. I'm sure you'll be, even if it's one of those Zoom conference things. I'm sure you'll be doing plenty more because it's one of those things. Once you do one and people see that you held your own, you kept it going, you performed, you danced, did your thing. You'll
right,
you'll you'll start getting more. And then once you do a few, and once you get put down in people's book as being there, being reliable, which you are very reliable, and knowing your stuff, you'll at a certain point you'll probably be one of the go-to people on someone's list.
I hope so, man. I mean, it was kind of cool to be paid travel, and they were going to pay me an honorarium to do this, which would have been fantastic. But I actually sacrificed that so my wife could have a free ticket.
That's cool.
And because she wanted to be there, and I
Well,
wanted her
not
to
that,
be
but
there.
for her to experience that, it makes it even all that more important for you for her to see your first outing. Because trust me, after you do
Hmm.
6, 7, 8, 15 of these, she's not going to give a shit no more. She's like, it's just enough.
I know.
So,
Well, it's like
for her to
she
go to
used
the
to
first
listen to
one,
our show,
yeah.
and
Well,
now she
I've been doing this since 2018. Carrie's never listened to an episode. I mean,
yeah. Well, and my
it's
wife
not her
does it
bag.
now.
Yeah, because they live with us. They hear this crap in the free time. Why do they want to waste their valuable free time?
Exactly. Yeah.
Like, I got to put up with
And
him
you
8
don't
hours
want
a
them to
day.
do that. So
Him being in the other room is the only time I can get away from him. So I'm happy he's gone. And why would I go back and listen to it?
nah,
I'm
she
tired of
probably
his
yeah.
stories.
No, you're right.
Now I'm talking about me and all of us. With the exception of Jeff's wife, but yeah, they're all. We've heard all this crap. We don't care. It's World War II all the time. Just shut up already.
No, she had a great time and really enjoyed what she heard, and my son was there too, so that
Oh,
was
that's
cool.
awesome. So now you said you did your panel on Friday, but was this a
Yes.
weekend long event?
Yeah, it was over on Saturday. Uh there were panel discussions all through Saturday. I missed a couple of those because Saul and James Hall and I ended up going into town and getting some lunch, just hanging out. And like I said that morning, he interviewed me for We Have Ways. Um, and he does this is a cool thing. He does a history festival in England called the We Have Ways History Festival.
Nice.
And it's like reenactors and tanks and World War II vehicles. And so he invited me to come to that in September. So I'm kind of excited about that because I've heard people talk about that. But it ended on Saturday night. They had Ben McIntyre, who's a British military historian. He gave, what would be like the ultimate keynote speech, I guess. Have you heard? I know Jeff probably has. Have you heard of Colditz Prison?
No.
It was a huge castle in Colditz, Germany, that
Okay.
was used as a prisoner of war.
Is that the one where somehow I'm going to destroy this story because I'll probably name it the right. Is that the one where somehow the Allies were there, and then the German army was moving in, and like the prisoners fought on the behalf of with the Allies, or like some of the German soldiers there were fighting with the Allies to get them out? Or is that a completely different story?
That could very well. The exact anecdote doesn't. It wouldn't surprise me if it was because Colditz, like it was this huge castle, and so Ben McIntyre wrote a book about it. He actually went and lived there for a while, wrote a book about it. You can go stay there; it's a tourist thing, but it was this massive castle. If you remember the movie Where Eagles Dare,
No.
Richard Burton, Clint Eastwood, 1975.
full disclosure, I just watched Dirty Dozen and Kelly's Heroes both over Thanksgiving weekend for the first time. So I'm late on my 60s, 70s World War II films. I'm getting caught
Well,
up.
Kelly's Heroes is a separate conversation because that's one of my favorites. But
Yeah, I just wish
um,
Donald Sutherland didn't talk like a 70s hippie, but that's neither here nor there.
I know, man. But
But
it's look, it's like the annoying kid next door. You grow to love it.
the two
you
things
know,
I
it,
noticed is one, I got a newfound respect for Telly Savalas because prior to that, I only knew him from Little Orphan Annie. and,
oh man, Telly Savalas, Big Joe.
but it was interesting how Telly Savalas was in both of them. Donald
Yeah,
Sutherland was in both of them. I found it was interesting in Kelly's Hero, much like Long Stay, every single Allied guy had a Thompson. Yet
yeah,
in Dirty Dozen, every single ally had a grease gun. So once again,
and it's like they all had their own Jeeps.
yeah, but it's like during these productions, like where's all the M1s and M car? They must have been tied up over
Yeah,
Nam somewhere or something. But because in all those like late '60s, '70s, it's like everybody had Thompsons or grease guns.
yeah. Well, the only reason I brought that up though was because the castle used in Where Eagles Dare
Okay,
looks a lot like Colditz. It's not, because that question was asked of Ben McIntyre, and it's not, but it looks just like it. Huge castle on the snowy mountain, and but yeah, it was the Germans had a lot of Allied POWs there, and it was not. I mean, yeah, if you escaped, you would be shot, but I mean, it was not. There was no torture, there were no atrocities. It sounds like to hear him, and it was really his talk was delightful because he was very humorous. And we actually got the book. My wife wants to read it, and then I want to read it after her about Colditz. But it sounds like it almost evolved into this. Like now we're talking. Remember the show Hogan's Heroes?
yeah,
It almost sounds like it was this clownish, boisterous relationship that developed between the guards and the prisoners. And as long as the prisoners didn't try to escape, nobody got hurt. Now,
gotcha.
if they tried to escape, they would get shot. But it was not a place of torture. There were no atrocities. They would do these plays, and sometimes the German guards would jump in and participate. It just sounds like a really interesting microcosm of World War II culture. But I'm looking forward to reading Ben McIntyre's book. His talk was just fantastic. I mean, great sense of humor.
I'll take a real quick pause. This is something that we do on the What's in Your Head podcast, but never really had the opportunity until now. Sorry, Mike. Hopefully you're still in here. I just happened to look down. Mike via the YouTube live stream wants to know, Don, what branch do you prefer to reenact as? That is a good question, but kind of a tricky question. My heart belongs to Chesty Puller in the Marine Corps. Problem is, there are very few events. Obviously, I'm wearing my shirt right now. We had the 75th anniversary of Tarawa in Fort Morgan, Alabama, which was one of my all-time favorite events. Landing craft, everyone was in the exact same uniform. You say, well, that should be no. Most events, everybody has a uniform, but I mean, we had uniform standards down to what canteen cover you had on, what color piss color you had on. Everything was exact. The way Fort Morgan's laid out, there's berms all around the fort. So one of the only living history event where you can spin in a 360 degrees, with the exception of the outbuilding where the outhouses were. You did not see a single modern day vehicle. There was no hot dog stands. There was no T-shirt stands. There's no techno music playing in the background like at air shows. It was an event. Probably had 150 so guys. Only thing you saw were pump tents, wall tents, a few pyramid tents. You had guys dressed up in like CBs, a few Army cats, but primarily Marine Corps. I love doing Marine Corps events when we have them. They're few and far between. Sadly, more often than not, I'm doing 1st Infantry Division, 1st ID, Army. Every once in a while, usually VK.
Big Red One.
Yeah, which that was the first Army impression I did, but that group kind of dismantled, and I'm kind of a nomad now. So I only have a few of my uniforms have a Big Red One patch on it, but usually I take them off because I fall in with other groups depending on what event I'm at, because our actual group fell apart. But yeah, usually I'm wearing either Army wools or HBTs, but anytime I get the opportunity, I have more Marine Corps equipment as far as original stuff. When I'm out rolling around the dirt, I wear all reproduction stuff. But if I'm at a museum doing a living history event where I have displays set up, if I can, I'll bring out my Marine Corps stuff because I have original Boyd 1942 stuff. I got Boyd 1944 stuff. I have an original Holly pith helmet. I got my D-Bale fixed helmet front seam. I got P41s, P42s. I just have more original stuff, and I just know more about the subject matter. But more often than not, I'm doing Army impression and falling in with other groups around Florida. But I hope that answers your question. So, and I know Gabe's in here. He's always doing Marine Corps stuff. Real quick, I sent you and Jeff, you're a little preoccupied, this was last Monday, a link on eBay because I saw these, and they're listed as Army Air Corps headphones, and they were going for $25. So I sent them to Jeff, and he's like, I already got 2 pair, and so I went ahead and snagged them. But looking tonight, and I wish Jeff was here to answer this question. I'm sure they all use the same equipment, but I'm seeing more stuff on Google similar to this, calling these Army Signal Corps. But I'm sure just about all the equipment in an Army, B-17 and all that was probably Signal Corps equipment. So I didn't know if anyone in the Army Corps actually wore these, maybe the navigator in the back or whatever. But these are Connecticut Electronics number 607Rs. And the cool thing is they have dual plug-ins instead of single. And so, but these things are pretty stout and heavy. I don't know if you can see them very good, but they're in great condition for $25.
See, I'd love to have a 50 Mission Crush hat and then a mannequin head and then those on top of the hat.
Yeah, I think, and I'm going to say, I'll have to look at the picture Jeff sent me, but I think these are probably very similar, maybe in the same model, because he said he already had 2 pairs. But real quick, I don't know if it's been such a crazy month. I don't know if I covered this when I got back from Ohio. As you guys know, I flew out of town. My roommate, my last roommate I had, male roommate I ever had, that I had in Ohio before I moved to California, passed away. And so I took my backpack, I put a shirt, tie, pair of nice jeans, and then I just wore my service boots because they look like nice dress shoots, polished them up, and I had my M41 jacket, and I just put a backpack on and hit the road because I flew the nickel and dime airlines that charge you for everything. And even with my military-style backpack, I had to pay $56 round trip. But anyhow, I took with me, because at the time, and I need to reach out to her to book her on the show, but I was reading, and I've said this multiple times, Brothers in Arms, Brothers in Battle, Best of Friends. It's the story of Wild Bill Garnier and Babe Heifer. And the reason I bring this up is I was reading this book just to finish it, and I go to Jason's Celebration of Life, and he and I were living together when Band of Brothers came out. And we were watching on HBO, and then I moved to California. And I hadn't seen him, talked to him in years, and talked to him occasionally on Facebook, but nothing in depth. I wasn't aware that, much like all 30-year-old dudes, he got into World War II at some point. And so I'm sitting in this Celebration of Life, and a lot of our friends, we were in high school in the 90s. Marilyn Manson was huge at the time. Prior to him being huge, most Marilyn Manson goth kids were an underground thing. And so a lot of our friends were goth kids, and a lot of them still live that style today. And to be honest with you, and this isn't a knock on anybody, I was the only one there in a shirt and tie. I felt a little overdressed, but I had my M41 jacket on, a shirt and tie, and I'm sitting there with my boots on, and I'm hearing the presenter talk about how Jason got into World War II, and he loved reading all things history. I'm thinking, well, that's kind of cool. I'm hearing a M41 jacket and World War II boots. But the reason I bring this up is 6 or 7 episodes back, Jeff mentioned bookmarks. What do you guys use as bookmarks? What do you use as bookmarks? And sadly, he very coolly had a 1st Marine Corps Division patch that he uses the bookmark, and I reluctantly and sadly said I got toilet paper in mine, and we all had a good laugh. So I felt it was only appropriate after being at Jason's Celebration of Life and the presenter talking about how he loved reading World War II books, and I was reading this on the plane to and from. And so now, to answer Jeff's question, at least in this book, I have Jason's memorial card acting as the bookmark in the book that I read when I flew up there for his Celebration of Life. So 15 years from now, next time I crack this book open, No, me, it'll probably be 2 years from now. I'll be reminders. So out of all my books, at least one of them doesn't have toilet paper in it now. So that's for you, Jason. But what are you reading, fella?
I am probably 30 pages away from finishing the James Holland Normandy 44 book, which I've been reading for a few weeks now. Pretty long. It's 540 pages, so it's a pretty long book.
Yeah.
When I finish that, I'm gonna probably read Devotion because we went and saw Devotion the other night.
I was going to add, that was on my list. I'm going to try to go see that maybe this weekend. I wanted to see it over the weekend, but things just been too hectic around here, and Carrie hasn't been feeling up to snuff, and so I'm hoping
Right.
to go out and see that this weekend. For those you don't know, shame on you. That's the movie. It's based on the book that not Adam Makos, but sorry about that. We just had him on the show 2 weeks ago.
Yeah, Adam Makos wrote the book.
Yeah,
Devotion.
Adam Makos. I'm sorry. I was like I said, Adam Makos wrote the book, and just so happened he moved down here, so he's a local boy now. And so, yeah, I want to definitely go out and support that because one, it looks like a fantastic film. He writes great books, and
He does,
support our
yes.
friends. And so, how was it without any spoilers?
I really enjoyed it. The flying scenes were, I thought, incredibly well done. I look, for all we know and constantly read about World War II, man, I've never read anything on the Korean War. I did know that they had F-4U-5s in Korea and maybe some Dash 4s too. I don't know, but you know how much I love Corsairs, and so, but
See a Corsair getting chased down by a jet plane. It's crazy.
yeah, and that scene was really well done. I thought the flying scenes were great. I mean, like Adam said when he was on our show, you've never seen Corsairs on the big screen like you will here.
And when's the last time we've seen Korean War anything on a big screen, especially in high def? Never.
Yeah, I thought that of course, this is not a spoiler. One of the guy who plays Hudner is the guy who was in Top Gun Maverick.
Haven't seen it.
Can't read. You haven't. Okay, I've only seen it. Well, I've seen it twice.
Only twice.
Not at the theater. My wife saw it at the theater. She got it on Netflix here, but
is it already on Netflix?
Huh?
Maverick's already on Netflix?
I think it is. I think she got it on Netflix.
Or she
I
did
mean,
pay-per-view,
we
probably.
downloaded it. I know
Yeah.
that, but I mean, I'm not a jet guy. That's I mean, I liked Top Gun just because of the time period, the '80s and all that. But I'm not a jet guy. That's not what really gets me going like Corsairs would. But the movie was good. I mean, I liked Devotion. I thought, obviously Jesse Brown was the first black naval aviator. So, of course, there are going to be things that go along with that story.
Which right now in Hollywood is what they're looking for, too. And so there's no better time for that. So.
Oh, well, yeah. And I have to say, I was really hoping they wouldn't just beat us over the head with some of the elements of that. And I don't think they did.
That's good.
So, and since I haven't read the book yet, my wife has, I have not. I didn't have a basis for comparison, but,
now, did she read the book prior to going to the movie because she knew she was going to the movie, or she just read it for the sake of reading it?
She read it a couple of years ago just because we're friends with Adam.
Oh, okay, cool.
So she's read A Higher Call. I've got to read A Higher Call as well. Because, see, that came out when I'd already walked away from all the World War II stuff after the Pacific. So I haven't read A Higher Call yet. Now, I have read Spearhead.
Yeah. And Voices of the Pacific.
So, and but yeah, I enjoyed it. I did not think that the elements of the particular aspect of the story that we just touched on, I didn't feel that was overdone.
That's good.
So yeah, I enjoyed it.
Well, hopefully I can get out and see it this weekend, and I'm sure Jeff's seen it, so maybe when he comes on, we can do a collaborative contrast comparison. But looking forward to that as well. We were going to get in a little bit of Tarawa tonight, but there's really, we've done episodes on it at length in the past. We touched on it a little bit, but
well, I probably talked too much about the conference.
No, it's fine. That's fine. People wanted to hear about it, and we've been gone for a week and a half or whatever, so everything worked out well. Gabe Rivera says via the YouTube live stream, yes, I do Marine Corps impressions, and very good ones. I think you're dipping your toe a little bit into Vietnam stuff too. I think seeing some of your TikTok videos. But yeah, if you guys want to support the show, please do us a favor and go over to WTSPWorldWar2.com. Click on the Patreon link, sign up and subscribe. It goes a long way to help keep the lights on and the internet up in here and all the streaming services and this and that. There's actually a little bit of overhead to do what we do with all the third-party companies involved. And for example, right now we're streaming on 4 platforms, and all that stuff costs money. So you guys want to help us out, please head over to WTSPWorldWar2.com. Click on that Patreon link, like, subscribe. The cheapest plan's $1 a month. We're not like these podcasts where you're here for $15 a month. No, our most expensive plan is $3.50 a month. After all, I wouldn't pay someone $15 for their Patreon, so we wouldn't expect you to do the same. So our most expensive plan is like $3, I think. Maybe $7. No, I think $3, give or take. Anyhow, it's, as they say, cheaper than a cup of Starbucks. Yeah, so for cheaper than a cup of Starbucks each month, you can help us keep the lights on around here. And we greatly appreciate all the support. And please, if you have not done so, we're so close. We're scraping the line. But every day it resets, because how it works on YouTube is they count for 3 months. And so each day you lose numbers unless they're made up. So please head over to youtube.com, look for Digital 410. You can watch our live streams every Monday. You can watch What's in Your Head live streams on Tuesday. You can see all my annoying, boring fishing videos. You can see my World War II content. We're going to try to do some, we'll get a hold of Henry and work on some stuff there. But anyhow, you guys can support the channel that way. And I think we're going to wrap it up a little early. I mean, we went 60 minutes. I think we only lost 15 to 20. But, it's been a long day, and we're losing our voices. And I think we covered all the pertinent things about the panel. I assume that being on the panel, you got to peruse the museum once you're done as well, I would assume.
Yeah, Rich took us over. We went through the Road to Tokyo exhibit with him. I'm really wanting to get them interested in getting my dad's things. As you know, I have my dad's artifacts.
I know the National Museum for Pacific War has a few things.
They do. Yeah, I took some things out there in 2020, but I'm sorry, in 2000.
Wow.
But I'd really like to get it's a longer, I don't know. I've started the conversation. I think there's some interest. Well, there's definitely a lot of interest in it. It's just that, that's a separate conversation.
Isn't it amazing how the older we get, how 20 years doesn't seem that long ago? It's like, you're like,
No, it doesn't.
I drove up there in 20, no, it was 20, wow, 20 years ago drove up there. But yeah, it's like,
Yeah.
I'm watching TV shows. Oh, I've been in business for 20 years. I'm like, oh, it's not that long. And then I was like, well, I was only in business for 18. So, but yeah, just 20 years doesn't seem that long when you're pushing 45 and 50. So
No, I'll try getting in your late 50s.
yeah. But yeah, I say the older I get, the younger old gets.
Yeah.
For example, the movie Cocoon. Remember that movie?
I do.
Wilford Brimley was only 52 when he shot that movie. I think half the
Wow.
staff was in the 50s when they shot that movie. But yeah, with the exception of the old guy and the old lady from who also played in Batteries Not Included. I think they're the only ones who were actually in their 70s at the time. But yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think Aunt B was only 43 on the Andy Griffith Show.
That puts it in perspective. That is crazy.
What I can't believe is when I watch Seinfeld, and like especially season 1 through 3, they're like only 33. They still look older than that to me. Or when I watch Roseanne, and Roseanne and Dan are supposed to be like 35. I'm like 44, and I still like they look older. They were an old 35 at that time, but I guess it just goes to show you nowadays with all the crap we have in our food, it keeps us looking younger longer, I guess.
I guess.
I don't know. But anyhow, it's going to wrap it up for this episode of the What's the Scuttlebutt podcast for myself, Mr. Henry Sledge, and Jeff Copsetta. We will see you all next week, and I'll have to put the music in post, but thank you guys so much.